This episode of the podcast is brought to you by New Bloom Labs.
Astute cannabis producers know that weeks-old crop or old product data simply isn't viable. It's clear that lab testing is frustrating. It's one of the biggest, most frustrating bottlenecks in our industry. It's simply unacceptable to wait 1 to 2 weeks or even longer for full panel analysis of your cannabis products. That's why you need to know about New Bloom Labs. The New Bloom Labs team is the real deal. With locations in Tennessee and Texas and more to come soon, New Bloom Labs provides precise, accurate analysis and the best turnaround time in the industry. They always provide next business day turnaround on potency tests and 1 to 2 business day turnaround on most toxin screenings. They're ISO certified and DEA registered, so you know their science is first rate. Most cannabis producers are frustrated with their third-party labs, but you don't have to be. Call New Bloom Labs at 844-TEST-CBD or visit their website at newbloomlabs.com. Superior science, rapid results, New Bloom Labs. Hello everyone, Kevin Carrillo here, and welcome to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast. My guest today is Adam Grossman, founder and CEO at Papa Barkley. Adam Grossman, how are you, sir?
Good, Kevin. Happy to be here.
Great. Well, I'm excited for you to be here as well. I have to say this right up front. Absolutely love your company. Big fan of the products that y'all are producing and making, especially in the CBD side. So I first, for the people listening, I'm holding some of these products up that y'all graciously sent me, and I really appreciate that from the Papa Barkley team. But I have some relief balm, which I've been using every night, and my wife has said that I smell really good, so that's a positive. And then the second is the tincture and the capsules, the CBD relief capsules. And I got to tell you, man, I took one for the first time last night, and I felt great. So, but I love the origin story of Papa Barkley, and so let's start there, Adam. So talk us through, like, how this company came about, and specifically how you were introduced to CBD with your dad.
Yeah. So actually, so what happened was, back in 2015, I was living in New York, and my parents were elderly and needing help at home. And so I was going back and forth to help take care of them. And, at the same time in New York, we were starting to look at the cannabis space. My background's entrepreneurial, and in my career, been a serial entrepreneur in a few different types of businesses, and so, but having had a lifelong experience in relationship with cannabis, we were excited about the cannabis space and having those conversations in New York. But I was taking care of my parents, and what happened was my dad developed this back condition that left him bedridden, spinal stenosis, and he couldn't get out of bed, and we didn't know what to do, and he was hospitalized. And when we called the pain specialists, and they said if he didn't get out of bed in the next week to 10 days, that he probably wouldn't. And so I was desperate, and at the suggestion of a friend who was in California and seen a bomb in a dispensary, went online on YouTube and looked up formulas and blended a couple, and then called up a high school buddy and got some weed and borrowed a crock pot from a neighbor. And yes.
When you sought out cannabis at that time, was it because you had already kind of understood some of the medicinal benefits, or had you consumed in the past, or was this just something that you were looking to as an alternative based off the other medications that he may have been taking at the time?
No, so I had consumed in the past, for my own, recreationally and then medicinally, sports injuries, and found it to be helpful. Thank you for clarifying that. This was the first time I had seen it in the context of a bomb, though, and so so for my dad, so just went down that path and got the ingredients at Whole Foods, coconut oil, and cooked up 2 ounces of the best weed that I could get in the crock pot to make the really strong oil. And then the next day blended in the beeswax and and vitamin E in the essential oils. And when I put it on my dad's back, I could get him out of bed. He responded to it, and over time, and at the time, so he'd been put on hospice. So he actually got off hospice. He got better with repeated applications of this balm, and it was just this amazingly empowering experience. And so I started giving away samples to friends and family, and then that started, we started looking at the topical side, and then when I met Guy, who was on your show, my partner Guy Rocourt, yeah, that's when we formed the company and launched Papa Barkley. And our first product was the pain balm that you were just talking about, the relief balm. We launched with that in June of 2016, and we launched the business out of a house that Guy owned here in LA, and he had his grow in the basement, and we had the lab off the kitchen and 20 crock pots at one point and the bedroom upstairs was our office. So that's how we launched the business.
A true startup house, it sounds like, right? But you're not just in the garage, you're in the kitchen, you're in the other.
Oh my God, no. And this has been a grow house, that he had, and still is in the basement, still has a hydroponic system with beautiful, where we maintain our strains.
Yeah.
And so it couldn't have been a more ideal situation. I had never made anything before. I made this product, and it was like, and then his skill set as a he's the creative sort of force in terms of product development, but we were able to join together and form a pretty good partnership.
Yeah. Well, and going back to your dad, and when you created that first batch of that balm on your stove, was it like an immediate result? Did he feel it was like night and day after he had rubbed that stuff on his skin and had a good
So
night?
the thing was, I had to move him, and so he was in so much pain that I couldn't get him out of the bed. And if he was taking too much of like tramadol or methadone, and he'd get too wasted, couldn't move him, and then in too much pain otherwise. So with the balm, it just like provided that immediate relief. He just really responded to it, so I could get him out of bed, and then I keep some in the bathroom when you sit on the toilet, put some more on him there, and just constantly putting it in, and then the massaging, and then with nutrition, he just got better. So it was part of his care program. It's such an integral part, and it provides that immediate reduction in pain to the point where he had mobility.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can speak for myself. Like I said, I've been trying it in the evening time, and my background since I was 5 years old, I wrestled, right, and until I was 19 years old. First year of college is when I stopped my career. But you can imagine all those years of your joints and moving and shooting and bending your knees and sprawling and all these different movements. I mean, I can literally pop and crack every single part of my body. So I'm constantly in some kind of pain or ache or uneasy feeling. And so when I rub that on, especially at night, I just feel so relaxed and calm. And I really do feel the difference, which is why, again, I'm not just saying this and tooting your guys' horn. You do make a really good product, and not to mention the packaging is beautiful. But one point I want to bring up, Adam, and that is I had Dr. Stuart Titus on recently. He's the CEO of Medical Marijuana Inc. And, he's had a lot of experience on the science side of cannabis. He's testified before the FDA in 2019. And one thing that he brought up from a doctor that uncovered this, Dr. Russo, I forget what year, but he talked about this concept of endocannabinoid deficiency, right? Or deficiencies in the way in which our body's not getting enough cannabinoids for our ECS. So from Papa and Barkley's perspective, like, how can we ensure that we're making cannabis products that fit for all ages? Of course, there's restrictions now with age, but one, what's your thought on endocannabinoid deficiency, and what can we do to get cannabis in the hands of all patients?
So look, you had mentioned earlier the CBD, and for systemic conditions, like you can treat epilepsy with a pure CBD product like our 30-to-1. That's not hyperbole. So in terms of I think the reason that CBD is exploding is not because it's a fad. I think it's for the exact reason that your guest pointed out on the show, which is that our bodies crave this molecule. We all have endocannabinoid systems, whether or not we've ever touched the plant in our life. We make endocannabinoids themselves, that runner's high you feel. That's the endorphins, right? That's your endocannabinoid system, and that's why it feels the same as when you get high. And so the way that you take CBD, which is something that I think is critically important and almost always overlooked, is while you can have a result on an immediate basis like you did last night with sleeping better, and there's a whole range of how it affects you based on your endocannabinoid system and your experience, but the way to take CBD is you need to titrate it over time and find your dosage and maintain it. It's like a methadone or even other, like a Wellbutrin class of drugs that it accumulates and it stores in your fat cells. So I think relative to the broad concept of if everyone literally everyone tried a measured dose of CBD over the course of 5 to 7 days, you would have a substantial proportion of people would have like a potentially life-changing impact for things like, and by the way, that is how you would take it to treat your epilepsy. And so, as you know, the FDA has approved CBD, the molecule, isolated molecule, for a form of childhood epilepsy called Dravet syndrome. So that's just an interesting data point on the development of the science within the cannabis plant. And all of the cannabinoids, one molecule, the CBD, which is the one we're talking about, has been approved by the FDA. But just think more broadly that the THC and the 100 other cannabinoids that are present in the plant, none of those have been studied with sufficient clinical trials in the scientific community to really know. So anyhow, it's a fascinating topic and I can go on, but I don't want to.
That brings up a good point. I mean, so I know that within Papa and Barkley's product line, you focus, of course, on THC because you're California based, right? But then you also have your CBD line. Are there any plans in the future to experiment with other minor cannabinoids? Like,
let me be clear. All of our products are both THC and CBD and 100 other cannabinoids, because all of our products are made with all natural and chemical-free extraction methods, which I can explain in a second. Like if you just, for instance, take the flower, grind it up and put it into a crock pot with coconut oil, for instance. If you sent the flower out to the lab, it would have a certificate of analysis with the entire spectrum of cannabinoids and also plant nutrients and phytonutrients, as well as terpenes, which are the smell molecules.
Talking about the certificate of analysis, the COAs.
That's right. So, and then thank you for clarifying. So then if you took that on the flower and then later you tested the oil, it would have the same profile. So that full spectrum, as they say, just passed into the oil, and then we'd like blend in. So that's how we make our topical products. Very simply, that's one of the major ways that we do things, but it's reflective of how we make all of our products, which is always in these artisanal methods that preserves the full spectrum and so it's plant medicine. So it's not like in pharma where you have to distill down to just the CBD to get that CBD drug. There's no other. All of our products have, so we're selling in Vitamin Shop today in our national line, but those products have 0.3% THC in them because that's the federal legal limit. But they have entire full spectrum. And what's interesting is if you look on the shelf at Vitamin Shop, the other 9 of those 10 CBD products are not made in that full spectrum way. They're made using what's called CO2 supercritical extraction, which kind of breaks the plant in two and has just the THC CBD piece over here, and then all of the plant fats and the smell, in a separate brown liquid there. So not to drone on, but there's this fundamental difference in terms of the way the majority of those products are made. And I think the reason that we are having the success that we are with our, with our clients and in the market in California is really specifically because of this approach that we have, which is keep the plant, full and pure. We're up in Eureka finding the best outdoor sun-grown cannabis, and then processing it in as gentle a way as possible to preserve that full spectrum and all the potency of the plant. And I think that's the key to making great products.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've had geneticists on who have echoed what you're saying in that it's important to have a full spectrum product versus an isolate product, because I think the way Adam Jacques put it is it's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? You're not getting that entourage effect with all the cannabinoids that you're talking about. So while it may be appealing for some people to just say, this product just has CBD, well, that's great, but you're kind of missing out on all the other benefits of the cannabinoids that marry to our endocannabinoid receptors, right? The CB1 receptor, the CB2 receptor, and they're even saying that there's a new CB3 receptor. Again, Dr. Titus brought that up, which is interesting. And it's so it's important, and it's great that Papa Barkley is focused and hyper focused on full spectrum products. Are there any like primary cannabinoids that are full spectrum that are outside of THC and CBD that y'all are focused on, like say CBN or CBG?
Yes. So we are in formulation for a number of CBN products, for sleep formulations, and really, where our focal points are really starting, pain, anxiety, and sleep are the three core sort of, need states that we focus on. But we express all of our products in ratios of THC to CBD because it's sort of standard in terms of I think the logical way to measure, like, those are the two primary cannabinoids. They interact with the two receptors you just referred to. And so in our experience, it makes sense in terms of the balance between those two primary cannabinoids is driving the effect. Mm-hmm. We have products like our 1-1A tincture, which is made specifically to reduce the high effect. It's an amazing product medicinally, and a lot of people with more severe, like chronic conditions, anecdotally take that product. So that's a product in market. We also have, I think our living tincture is a pretty interesting product. It's a tincture made from, we have a fresh frozen concentrate, and so we use the wash water from that and can derive in a very gentle manner. So that's a raw product because it's processed below 103 degrees.
Wow. Well, one thing that stands out to me, going back to my conversation with Guy initially when he was on the podcast, was that he talked about this concept of owning the first cannabis conversation, right? And Papa and Barkley's like mindset of best in class, which it definitely shows in not only the way the product looks, but how they work. So talk to me a little bit about how important it is to own the first cannabis conversation. And I think just to kind of help people in terms of the example of what we mean by this is, there's a lot of products out there that either contain little to no CBD, right? Or some of the cannabinoids that are promised. And so that's a detractor for a lot of customers because they'll take it and they'll say, well, it didn't work, or, oh, I took too much, or this and that. So tell us about the importance of owning the first cannabis conversation when you're approaching someone that's new to the product.
Sure. I mean, that's always been, I think something that's been wonderful about like just the truth of how we started the company is that it's very easy to talk to somebody about a non-psychoactive pain bomb that helps your dad get out of bed and just reduces people's pain. So there's no political, so I think the first conversation is often, and now that in the national market as well, and why we're so proud to have a full spectrum product on shelf at Vitamin Shop with THC, right, on a national basis, but because it is full spectrum, it has that 0.3% THC. But
how'd you
being able to have the conversation with people that are unsure about cannabis and what's happening in the cannabis legalization more broadly, it's just a good starting point to talk about. The first products are the balm and transdermal patches. I'll give you an example, actually, of a story, if I may. We had a landlord up in Eureka, where all of our production and we're based, our landlord, when he was first in town, was he'd grown up in Eureka, very conservative, and was super anti-cannabis, and had seen destruction in the national forest, so like reasonable perspective. But in any case, he used to get up at the town hall meetings when they were talking about changing the zoning, even though he would benefit economically. He's like, no to cannabis. And so he's now giving away samples, of the bomb to his sister in Oregon, who drives down, who couldn't be more conservative, and because it works. So it's the power to sort of change the hearts and minds, to open people's eyes about, this is an amazing plant. It's a magical plant that it can help, and so that's that first conversation, I think, and that you can, I think, lead to the the variety of the works. But that when I think about the first conversation, that's kind of it.
Yeah. Well, it's important because even if you, like, as you mentioned, first off, it's an amazing plant because of everything that you said, that it kind of touches different people from different backgrounds, no matter who they are, right? You could, in what generation, it could be baby boomers, it could be Gen Z, it could be Gen X, it could be millennials. And they use it for all different ways, and they ingest it or consume it in different ways as well, right? And outside of that, even the benefit for mankind in terms of the environmental benefits of growing hemp plants, and how it enriches the soil and takes in large amounts of CO2, but then also what you can make from hemp, right? All the applications when it comes to material goods, biofuels, hempcrete, houses, plastics, right? So when you talk about, from my perspective of owning the first cannabis conversation, even if that person doesn't want to have it around them or use it, it's important that they're educated as to what this plant can do, right? Because the stigma that's been attached to the plant for so many years, it needs to go away, especially now that we're coming out of a pandemic, right?
Yeah, and I think you're right. And where we feel excited about being a voice in that conversation is, I think, because we are sort of non-controversial, and there is a political conversation to be had to just wake people up and destigmatize it, as you said. There are so many points to be made in terms of all the benefits you're talking about ecologically and historically. Hemp is an amazing product, especially when at a time the planet is like, and but to get to those conversations, you kind of have to find that the tip of the spear. And that's how I view sort of that core product mix, and that part of the conversation is like, let's just have a reasonable conversation, because you start there and then make the case and change the minds. And that's part of our, that's our mission. We're a mission-based company, and our mission is to unlock the power of cannabis to improve people's lives. So what you're talking about, we think of that in a broad sense. And I think, that's why you're having that conversation with B around as well.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I got to ask you. So we have no consumer oversight from the FDA at all right now, right? It's the wild, wild west when it comes to regulating CBD products. How did you guys get on the shelves of Vitamin Shop?
So I'd say there's limited, but there's some trouble. How do we? I mean, it's. I'll tell you, it's a long. We had to. It was such an interesting transition, because having grown up in the California marketplace, where we had to build everything from scratch. Our factories, we had to buy trucks to get our. I mean, nothing existed, and so when we decided to move into the national market, it was a bit of culture shock, because all of a sudden you're competing against these CPG companies, consumer packaged good companies, that have been in the market, like Nature's Way, with products for 30 years. And it's a very established infrastructure and distribution channels and the way you do things in packaging. And, we very entrepreneurial company, and we're figuring this stuff out as we've been growing. And so to make that shift, to be able to really required us to get more sophisticated, but we found the right folks to help us out, and it took us a long time to get in there. But we were lucky to be in there, and they're a great partner. And yeah, it's the retailers have obviously in COVID have been struggling a little bit as well, but yeah, we're super happy to be there. And what's great about it is part of that infrastructure that the established firms have is ways to train like their 4,000 sales reps across the country. And so, part of getting the word out correctly about like how to take CBD the right way and what you need to look for in terms of how are the products made, and do you want to have an isolate product, or are you thinking about it the right way, and plant medicine, like there's a ton of education. And so what's really been great is the ability to train the vitamin shop people and really get the truth out there in the way that can affect the kind of change you were just referring to.
Yeah, you made me think of something that's so fascinating right now in this time of our industry, in that it, the education factor is so important, right? It's not like you can just put these products on a shelf, say at a place like Vitamin Shop or other retail stores. You have to, like you said, educate the staff so that they understand how to explain the benefits of these cannabinoids and proper dosing and all that type of stuff. I mean, essentially it's should be regulated like a dietary supplement, right? Just like the products that are on the shelves of Vitamin Shop.
Hmm. Yeah, I fully agree, and yeah, I think the educational piece cannot be overstated, and that's another way to to really with that education is such a key part of getting, I think, just broader based buy-in and really advancing the science as well. But we put a lot of work into trying to uh, put good educational video up on our site and share it through these programs. And yeah, if people are listening and want to check out the Papa and Barkley YouTube site, there's tons of how it's made videos, and videos that describe, correct dosing, and the how it's made part is so critical for us. And it's such a it's such an aspirational market because everything is sort of fresh, and the immense potential of the plant medicinally is like outrageous. So our focus is we're working with farmers in Humboldt that are doing the most sustainable, pesticide free, in the Humboldt earth, not bringing in fresh soil, but native soil growth of the most, these are artists growing this plant that's just incredible. So it's you were talking earlier about I think you were mentioning just I just wanted to make the point about, it's like this is my life's mission, our lives are all of our missions, and so that's we try and reflect that in the packaging and like everything, because yeah, this is we're changing the world. We actually are changing the world. So
Yeah, it's different than some industries in that it really does. It has a good cause behind it at the end of the day. It does ultimately benefit mankind in so many different ways. And I want to talk to you about, so you mentioned your entrance into the national market and how you've gotten your product on the shelves at Vitamin Shop and steps like that, which are huge, right? So, but when you look at the election that just passed and the 5 states passing legalization, 4 for adult use, or 5 for adult use, one of which was for medical. Like, where do you see Papa and Barkley moving next in terms of these states and with all this public support that's growing?
well, it's really challenging to go into another state so long as in the current regulatory environment, because every state is operating it. If it's still federally illegal, then you have to get a license in that state or partner with someone there. And because our production methodologies are unique, we have to replicate all of our extractions. Nobody's doing it's proprietary, and no one's doing it anywhere else. So we have to build that. So obviously I thought you were going to ask what I thought the prospects were of short-term change and I think I think it'll continue sort of incrementally if the Democrats don't win in the runoff in Georgia. I think if there's divided government, it'll obviously take longer for change to happen, but I think there's some momentum now.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen the House, right? They passed the MORE Act. which is a good first step. Obviously, it needs to pass the Senate, which we all expect it will die there.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, time will tell. I really don't know. I've said before on the podcast that I feel like this is a bipartisan issue. Obviously, both parties are going about it a different way and at a different pace. So I think you're right in the sense that if it was full blue, we would see laws and passed faster maybe than with the red Senate in the House. But again, time will tell. What really will tell, in my opinion, is when the dust settles after this pandemic, no matter what party is in control, both at the presidential level and the Senate level, because we're going to need to do something economically to get back on our feet, right? And so when you get all the the tax revenue that the plan is bringing in California and Colorado and all these other states, I mean, the federal government at some point is either going to wake up and do this, or the states are just going to overturn it and they're going to have to follow suit.
Yeah, we're participating in a lobbying effort with the National Medical Cannabis Partnership, and the approach of this partnership is to have conversations on both sides of the aisle, and the starting point is around a federal medicinal construct, which again I think we line up very well with sort of that macro value proposition. If you can get into the room and have the conversation uh, with both sides of both parties. And I agree, like the economy post-pandemic and the potential of cannabis, it does provide a push in the right direction.
Yeah, and we've seen this play out before, right? I mean, what helped us get out of the Great Recession, right? The end of prohibition and alcohol sales. I mean, that was a one of the main drivers of that. So it's almost like history is kind of repeating itself in a sense, and it's exciting time really to be in the industry.
It is. It is. It feels. It's a totally exciting time to be in the industry. It's obviously there's some troubling times as well afoot for the country as a whole. And yeah, if somehow we could be helpful in the recovery and have that be a unifying force, that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, cannabis has been I mean, not the only thing, but one of the things that have been keeping me sane during this pandemic. I mean, I tweeted the other day that this was a blessing that I started this podcast because if I didn't, I wouldn't be learning as much as I've learned, and I wouldn't be meeting all the smart, intelligent people that are in the industry. And we're all helping people kind of understand, like we've talked about, the medicinal benefits, the economic impact that the plant could have, and featuring great products and companies like Papa and Barkley and telling their origin story, which is amazing.
And then just straight up stress reduction like that, the taking the tincture every day is definitely how I am dealing with the stress.
And we've seen most of the United States or Americans doing that, right? Because we saw consumption levels go up, and people buying more of the product during this pandemic because of the high anxiety and the uneasiness right now that's occurring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely. That's our online CBD subscription uh, is the right answer if people are looking for a straight line to try and manage their stress and take something new that's healthy.
Yes, the Bliss Box. I liked your Bliss Box. That's what y'all sent me. So thanks again for that. I really appreciated it.
You're welcome. Yeah, what's fun is that we make all these different products so you can experience cannabis in different ways. Like we have like a bath soak, and that gives a certain effect. And we've got now in our new edibles line. We've got chocolates that are amazing, and those two we're using innovative ways to, for instance, to infuse some with keef. So different ways, and he's a master at the infusion method, and so it makes for an interesting differentiated experience because the delivery method of cannabinoids is one of the main variables, along with your own endocannabinoid system and your THC sensitivity and your brain chemistry. So there's always a variety of like reactions. So when you break it down, and now that we've got the various categories of products, it's just interesting to see and them both individually and in combination, and try and break down, like, it's tough to align specific delivery methods and effects, and it's a fascinating puzzle, I should say.
Hey, what you're explaining sounds like the ultimate puzzle. Like not only the formulation, but then the delivery mechanism of which the person will consume, and then whatever's in that product when you're delivering, how will it affect the system based off the delivery, right? Like they all kind of affect one another, and you have to dial each one in to make sure they all correspond with one another, right?
Exactly. I dream in data tables. And if you just think about trying to map like different effects by the 100 cannabinoids and then all the terpenes, because that's what really differentiates an indica from a sativa. So there's all sorts of magic in the terpenes aside from the cannabinoids. So it is an endless puzzle, which is part of the thing that's so interesting about it.
Yeah, well, and that example is really what some doctors have explained the future of medicine being, where, we have so much information around each cannabinoid. We know what it does, how it interacts with our endocannabinoid receptors, and then from there they just dial it in. Okay, I need this, I need CBN for sleep, I need to turn this up for this, I need, which is a lot different approach than what we do currently in the pharmaceutical market, you know.
Well, it is and it isn't. But if you think about what we just talked about, and you actually like constructed that table, that data table in Excel of all the different variables you're trying to track for, all the different cannabinoids and terpenes, et cetera. And then you think about back to that pharma model where it's just like, no, 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 no. Just take the CBD and match it against Dravet syndrome, that one specific disease with that small population of people, and that's going to be the easiest thing to get approved because you can create a statistically significant change in that population for the better with that one molecule. Here we're talking about 100 cannabinoids and hundreds of molecules. So it's really it's the essence, the difference between plant medicine and the whole pharma game. So it's interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you mentioned the terpenes. That's a whole other variable in itself because the way it interacts with our bodies, the smell profile, I mean, everything, right? The flavor, it's
He always says that THC and the cannabinoids are the engine, but the terpenes drive the ship.
yes. That shout out to Guy. I like that saying. I'm gonna quote him on that in social media.
Yeah, it's a good one. I quote him on it all the time.
Okay, hey Adam, so you've done this already, but for those listening, if there's an aspiring cannabis entrepreneur, right? You've built and scaled a successful mission-driven cannabis startup. What would be your advice to someone that wants to do the same?
Well, I would say it particularly in this amazing aspirational industry, like make sure that you have an incredible passion for the specific product or service that you're bringing, and the notion, like if you can't be mission based in this industry, you should aim for that as an entrepreneur. I think that's the most important thing, because I think then you have a currency to find other people, because the other part you need to do is build a team and motivate them. And so if you have a passion and a mission, you can use that as currency to build your team. And then start there.
That's great advice. No, that really is. A lot of people are gonna benefit from hearing that. And one other question before we sign off. I see for those listening, there's this picture which is on the Papa and Barkley branding. It's of an older gentleman and his dog. Is that your father?
Yeah, so that's my dad, who my nieces and nephews call Papa, and Barkley, who was my dad's dog, was originally my dog, but got attached to my dad, and so I had to give him the dog, and he would never leave his side, always touching him on the couch, would sleep in the bed under the covers with my dad. This is a 75-pound pit bull we're talking about, beautiful animal. So, the whole experience, we were going to start like a fund, and it wasn't, what happened here was my little passion project on the side. So that's a picture that I took and I played with it. And then we actually got that sketch done by the same of a picture that I took of my dad on the couch with Barkley. And we got it, somebody to sketch it out and then use that as the logo. But it was always about, the whole experience was about, care and love, and that was what was represented to me looking at that picture. So that's kind of how it became our symbol.
Wow, I'm so glad that I asked that question because I always wondered. I mean, after reading your story, I kind of assumed, but it's beautiful, and you know, you guys keep blazing the trails and being blessed, best in class at what you do. I mean, like I said, I really enjoy your products, and your packaging is beautiful, and as the industry develops more and more, I can't wait to see more of your products on the shelves in more stores in the future.
Thanks, Kevin. Really appreciate your support and really enjoyed the conversation today. It was really fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. And where can people find your website and social media if they want to visit you?
Thanks. So it's Papa and Barkley, and my Boston accent often confuses people. So it's PAPAANDBARKLEY, Papa and Barkley. And our CBD site is papaandbarkleycbd.com.
Awesome. Cool.
And
Well,
we're on Instagram.
well, thanks again, Adam, for your time. And I want to have you guys on real soon as things develop. And I appreciate everybody for listening today.
Thanks so much, Kevin.
Bye.
Bye-bye.